I don't think I could be a coach personally. I don't know. I'm just one of those who, like, I just got to play. What made you want to step into men's sports and coaching that as well? Because I think not the easy route, but it would have been like, oh yeah, women coach women's sports. That's kind of the narrative on that. And yet you're
Right.
changing it here.
It's so interesting of a question. I actually thank you for asking it because it's one that I haven't really answered. I actually never chose the men's game or the women's game. I actually found myself teaching skating and skills to both sides. And all I cared about was working with the best athletes. So I wanted to work with the highest level. And I was training, Olympic level female athletes. And then eventually junior pro NHL players started to come through the door. And ultimately I was kind of carving out my teaching strategy, my voice, my style of coaching organically through that process. And so there was never a choice. But what I found was as I was teaching my work and my approach, I was reaching a lot of pro men's players. They were the ones coming through my door. And so I just found that my style of coaching and communication was hitting with them differently. And the opportunities that started to come my way were actually in the men's game. And so,
Mm.
All things transcending gender related, I think it was my style of communication was almost a way that they were receiving me differently in a way that was bettering their development. And so ultimately, I just found myself continuing down paths and opportunities that were strictly in the men's game, and there was never the choice. And now, full circle, I think that because I'm different, I bring something different to the men's game, and that's exactly why I got into the position. There was never a like, how do I do this? It's about this. It's not about that. But there was careers, like financial careers specifically at that time, and more of them in the men's game. So I just kept kind of following that path and the next opportunity.
What is it you find that you do a little differently?
Well, I think because there's a lot of things, but because I have different experiences, because I come from a different background, playing included, even a lot of my feminine traits shine through in my style of coaching. But what I do differently, I think, is I communicate on a very human level. I've morphed my coaching style into, well, I aspire to it every day, to the type of coach that I wanted, that I would have really benefited from. And that would have, been someone that was very human athlete first, just treating the person on a level where connection and trust and the relationship is the core foundation, and then finding ways to work through them to better their game as an athlete. And obviously there's that goes into the actual tactical side and the technical side of the coaching, but really establishing strong communication and also playing more into the vulnerable side of the game. I find, like, at least in the men's game, I bring, I think, a vulnerability that's real to them. And so they're not afraid to have some of the harder conversations. I always say it's kind of like you go to mom and dad for different things oftentimes. And I go to my mom for different things. I go to my dad for different things. And sometimes those are harder scenarios, but I find they come to me in many ways for different conversations. And that's, I think, what is, set me apart and made my type of coaching hit with them the most.
I bet it's a refreshing take for them as well. I was watching a boys like lacrosse camp, and it's just interesting the different communication styles I think used across the games. I don't think one's better than the other. I think there's just different ways to coach. And I've had
Mm-hmm.
many different coaches in my days. I've had coaches who've been, I would say mean, but I think it's all like, it's different. And so I think even my coach for the sevens team, she cares so much. And she's was one of the only head coaches, female head coaches, and she coaches in a different way. And I think that it's like, I can't say one is better. I think that caring about your players as people and letting them be vulnerable can also help, even though it was always thought of like in sport to not be vulnerable. And
Right.
especially for, I imagine, NHL, big old hockey players, it's like almost a trait they're maybe not told to be okay with.
Right. And you just hit it on the head. Like, the two core elements to me that make for a good coach are caring and respecting the
Mm-hmm.
player. Like, once, it's so cliche to say, but they do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that care can be shown in different ways. Like you just hit on it, like tough love or more sensitive style, more like soft spoken, but doesn't matter how that care shows up. It's about the communication that demonstrates and like the actual actions that demonstrate that care that builds the trust, but then also the respect, like the level of respect. And I think that's earned over time through, again, action and items where like you can have different coaches and male, female, it doesn't even matter, but how they show up and respect you is going to be hopefully different than how they show up and respect other players, but like the standard of the excellence is still the same, right? And so those like two elements, once they're there, you can, that's why good coaches, great coaches never really all look the same. They show up differently, but I think those two core pieces are huge when it comes to the receiving end as a player, and the coaches that figure that out the quickest are the best, in my opinion.
So you are in a lot of rooms where you are the only woman. I spend time in rooms where I usually am the majority in my team, on all my teams with my sisters, friends, and whatnot. How have you, I guess, learned to carry yourself? How have you learned to kind of earn that respect? And what is it like now to walk into those rooms?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me is always focusing on the work and being prepared. Like those two things are paramount to anything. That you can't walk into any room and not feel a sense of discomfort if you haven't proven that you're capable to yourself and worthy of that role. So for me, I'm always, ensuring that my work and my preparation is up to par. But the second thing I think is very important is showing up as my authentic self. Like I never try to fit a mold, or I haven't tried to stray away from myself through this process. And that's been honestly probably the thing I'm most proud of in my journey is I've tried to remain through every step and every opportunity is just being Jess, embracing my femininity, never trying to dress down or dress differently. Like obviously in sport, we throw on our tracksuits, our skates, and other than the ponytail hanging out of my hat, like I approach my work and my process the same as everyone else. But the reality is I am different. And when I walk into a room, there is a moment in a space where I think I try to lean into my differences and know that that's where I can captivate attention and lean into the fact that the way I see it, the way that I present, the way that I communicate is different. And therefore, that's what sets me apart. And so I'm always trying to authentically embrace my differences and know that that's actually my greatest asset. Because I think when you're part of a team and you also get this, it doesn't matter if you're in a room full of females or if you have female coaches or not. Everybody on that team has different strengths and brings something to the table in a different role. And so I know that by leaning into my strengths and my differences, that I'm bringing something to the table that the team needs. And so I never try to shy away from that. And so honestly, it's like looking in the mirror every day and knowing that that's what makes me different. That's the point.
I like what you said about like femininity and like trying to keep that with you. Cause I think that, and it's something I'm, battling, is I love to wear makeup when I play. And I remember there was a time when I would look at other players, like in college, a girl would wear a full face of makeup and I'd be like, why is she wearing makeup? We're about to play rugby. What the heck? Leave that. And I've just so changed my view about that, because it's like wearing makeup doesn't take away from how hard I'm going to tackle or how well I'm going to play. And I hate that. I think we're changing that, but I hate that it almost was thought of that way. And that, we have to leave what our classic like feminine traits that make us feel so beautiful and good at the door to play sports, because sports are masculine and for men. So we got to try to assimilate as best we can. So I think that's been something I've tried to do as well, is like, while I'm tackling people, still try to bring my femininity. And I imagine even through coaching sports, like wanting to, because I think the big thing was like, oh, here's this really attractive woman coaching a men's sport. That's crazy. And then you almost get doubted because, sorry, God made me hot. Sorry, God made you hot, Jessica, and it's almost like you're doubted for that. So I love that you're sticking with that femininity, because it's almost would be easier to be perceived more as like, tough, masculine, and because people, align that traits with leadership in many ways.
You have such a tasteful way of saying it, but it's so interesting because assimilate is the best word that I've heard explain it, because like when I step behind the bench, even like this year, it's hard to find female suits, to be honest. Like there was a fashion trend where all of a sudden suits were all sold, 2-piece sets, but like there's a dress code for my coworkers, right? Suit, tie, it's pretty, it's pretty much in this mold. And for me, it's like, okay, how do I show up? What is the standard? I'm not looking to anybody else. I'm looking to the corporate world of like, what do female leaders wear in business rooms? But at the end of the day, I think by showing up as your authentic self and the best empowered version of yourself, it's like, look good, feel good, play good, right? To your point. And if you need to put on makeup before a game to show up as your most badass, confident self, great, do it. If I want to put on gold hoops and a jewelry that means something to me, that allows me to show up fully present as my strongest self, I feel very much so. Over time, I've learned this, especially through this year, I'm giving others permission to do the same. And that's what sport is about. By showing up as your best self, whatever that looks like, without judgment, you're giving permission for others to do the same. And that's just a beautiful thing. And why hold that back?